Welcome to this next session as part of the Business Growth Summit. I'm Jeff Lyman, the Chief Product Officer here at Weave, and I jumped at the opportunity to interview this incredible performer today. Lindsey Stirling is a world-renowned violinist, dancer, and artist with a social media following that is simply astounding. Nearly 13 million subscribers on YouTube, 4 million followers on Facebook, 1.5 million Instagram followers, 1.2 million TikTok followers, 500,000 followers. I mean, I'm getting exhausted just talking about this. On Twitter, her social media following has propelled her to publishing a New York Times bestseller, becoming a runner-up on Dancing with the Stars, winning multiple Billboard Music Awards. The list goes on and on. She's joining us today to share her story behind how she built her following, how she stays authentic to herself and her music, and how audience connection has driven her wild rise. Lindsey, welcome. It's so great to spend some time with you today.
Yes, thanks for having me, and thank you for that stellar intro.
You bet. Okay, let's start at the very start. I mean, very early on, as you're growing up in Gilbert, Arizona, you discovered you've got these talents, and they're not limited to one. It's dance. You were amazing on the violin. When did you start to put these together and then decide, I'm ready to actually start doing this in front of people I don't know?
Yeah, you know what's funny is growing up, I was pretty much a violinist. That was Lindsey. I play the violin. And it wasn't until I was quite a bit older that I thought to myself, I want to add something to what I'm doing. And the reason I thought that was because that's when I started to write music, was when I was in my 20s. And as I was writing this electronic violin music, and I'm sitting there, I always was so uncomfortable moving. I would just play like a statue. And, now I'm known as a dancing violinist. And I didn't start dancing until I was 23 years old. And I was self-taught for the first while. Actually, the only lessons I've ever received were when I was on Dancing with the Stars. And the reason I decided I wanted to move and play was, one, because I'd always loved dance. It was like the talent that I just never had gotten to exercise. But secondly, a lot of times, and to this day, I think to myself, what would I want to see? I really put myself in the place of an audience member or a consumer. And I'm like, what would I want to see if I was hearing this music and if I was at a show? And so I was like, there has to be energy. There has to be movement. So that's why I taught myself how to dance when I was 23. And then it was interesting because I actually went to film school. I did not go to business school. And I remember when I first started doing music, I thought to myself, I should have gotten a business major. I didn't realize how much business and marketing was in just trying to share your art, but that's over half the battle. And so I realized, well, what am I good at? Oh, I'm really good at video editing. I'm very good at, film directing. And so I started making these music videos, and, they found a home, of course, on YouTube. Anyway, so it was interesting to realize how all these very different skills that I either wanted to develop or that I had somehow kind of created this cornucopia that worked, and in a way that no one had ever done it before. And it all just came from, one, using what I had, and then also, what are my passions and how can I put them together?
So for you, your posts on social media and your content goes back 10, 12, 13 years, still with millions of views. Walk us through that experience. Like, I'm ready to take this and start putting it out for the world to see. Where did you host it? How did you manage that? Walk us through those early days of getting that early social media following.
Well, I think it's important to realize that back when I started doing my whole YouTube journey and using social media was not a widely known thing yet. YouTube was still in its early days, where most people, including myself, considered it a place for cat videos and just weird things that, almost like the rejects of the entertainment industry were seen as the people that went to YouTube. And so it's interesting to think of it that way, because prior to getting on YouTube, I had a book that I bought that was How to Make It in the Music Business. And I read this book, and it discouraged me to no end, because I was like, I don't have this kind of money. I don't have these kind of connections. This will take me my entire life to go about it this way. And Thankfully, though, I discovered, kind of a backdoor approach. And I think that nowadays, in starting any business, all of these ideas of social media are so widely accepted, that sometimes we feel like we've missed the boat on them. I mean, I think a lot of people do, thinking, oh gosh, it's impossible for me to start on YouTube or TikTok or whatever it may be, because it feels like that wave has passed. But over and over again in my journey of using social media, I've realized the rules are constantly changing. And if you feel like you missed the wave on YouTube, don't worry. Another social media platform will arise. It was YouTube, then it was Vine, now it's TikTok. The next one is coming. And so it's interesting to think about, if you think the traditional model, like that book, How to Make It in the Music Industry, if you are looking at things like that and thinking, this doesn't work for me, that's okay. There's literally a million ways. And doing YouTube was actually like my plan W. I tried a lot of different things. And I think it's really important to experiment and be okay with putting yourself out there in a place where maybe you don't fully understand it yet. It's really normal to feel super uncomfortable in that journey as you try these different things. But by trying lots of different things, that's the only way I am here today, is because, like I said, I was doing open mic nights. I did the college circuit gig. I went on America's Got Talent. I sent DVDs to record labels. Like, I did so many things. I got on a bus and rode it to Vegas from Utah to hand out, to talent agencies, little pamphlets of like my business cards. Anyways, I tried a lot of things. And so when I discovered YouTube, I was already very used to making myself uncomfortable. And YouTube was just the one that happened to work.
That's amazing advice. Talk to me about the feedback loop, meaning you would start to post some things and you started to learn which type of content really worked, which type of content was getting maybe more views than you thought, or other things that would get less than you thought, and how you reacted to that over time as you look to expand that viewership and audience over time.
Yes, I very quickly learned, because, here I was like, I want to write original music. What were my end goals? My end goals were, I wanted to write original music. I wanted to have albums. I wanted to have songs that, fans, my own fans, would be able to recognize. And I wanted to tour. That was the end goal for me. Being a young violinist that was just starting a YouTube channel, it was interesting to think about, what is actually leading me towards that goal? The goal always stayed the same, but sometimes the content had to deviate from what I thought. Instead of just focusing on original music, I had to be like, wow, when I do the obvious things that we all know now, it's taught in all the YouTube, seminars and stuff, you have to start with searchable content. And so I started doing things that were current, like video game covers. I released this Zelda medley, right as Zelda released their very anticipated new game that was coming out. And so I released it the same exact weekend. Zelda was a searchable topic because people were looking for it. They were looking for, gameplay footage. And so what did they come across? Some girl dancing in the woods dressed up as Link, playing the violin. And to be honest, I've never gamed. I'm not a gamer. And so some people might be like, sell out. But I loved the music. I love cosplay. So to me, it felt like, okay, this can be a part of this fits into my world. Yes, it wasn't the dream of I didn't want to be in the end game playing the Zelda medley on stage in front of people, which I have many times. But that took me forward to my end goal because it helped me develop an audience. And also I started this process of doing a cover song. And at the end of the video, I'd always link my original songs. And so it was almost like the bait to get people to click on the original, the end goal. And so I think that's the most important thing I've learned is, rather than focusing on project by project, or exactly working on the end goal, break it down into the overall vision and what things are going to help me, make it a step process.
Right. At some point in that progression, you knew you were onto something. What was the tipping point for you where you're like, okay, this is going to work, and this might even work really big here?
Yes, I had a very specific moment, and it wasn't the Zelda medley, that was my first viral video, but it was months later when I had written an original song. It was a dubstep song. Dubstep was a huge emerging fad of music. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to try to make a dubstep song for the violin. Never been done before. Again, taking something super current and searchable. and then doing something that'd never been done before in my own way. And I remember I put this video up at the time. I think I had like 100,000 subscribers, which is a good amount, you know. But within 24 hours, that video had over 1 million views. That had never happened to me before, even with any of the covers. And the fact that it was my music, it was like my attempt at the end goal. And that's what people were resonating with and sharing and saying, you got to hear this. Like, and so for me, I remember sitting there and looking at the numbers and thinking, my life just changed. I knew it in that moment. I knew it so strongly. I felt it in my heart, my gut, my spirit, like all the things connected. And I knew, and it was true. My life had changed in that very moment.
That must have been an amazing experience. You know, one of the things that you're known for is authenticity. It's a often thrown around word. I'm curious what that word means to you.
You know, to me, the word authenticity goes so much deeper than kind of the artist level that a lot of people think of it as. Like, I remember I used to think of it just as if you're authentic. Wow, I can't say that word. If you're authentic, then you'll do the kind of music. You know, you won't sell out. You'll stay true to your artistry. But for me, it's so much deeper because it means that I'm true to the person that I want to stay. And to me, that is values. That's not straying from the values that I care about and that I consistently decide I still care about. And that's people, putting people first, realizing that people are always just people, and every single person, whether I'm in a car in traffic, and, just really viewing people is something that is a staple in my life. And it comes a lot from my spirituality. And so to me, authenticity comes totally from the core of who you are. And then everything else about your business will come from that core, and it will be authentic.
Part of authenticity is just being willing to bring your whole self out there and not let them see just one side of you, but the good days, the bad days, the hard times, the things that you've struggled with, not just the places where you've been successful. I think that's where you've been amazing. How do you know when to set boundaries, though? Because your whole life isn't for the whole world. And where do you find that spot? It's like, well, here's what I'm willing to share, and here's the things that I'm just going to hold just for me personally and just for those who are, in my sort of close personal circles.
Oh gosh, that is a constant battle, I think, especially for anybody who is trying to put themselves out there as an artist or as a business. Where do you draw boundaries between fans, between all of that? And, this is actually something I've studied. I'm a big believer in, I like self-help books. I know a lot of people find them kooky or, wacky, whatever. I love them. I love the way they make me view my life. I love the way they set my perspective straight. I kind of constantly am listening to them if I'm like getting ready and I just was listening to a book by Brene Brown on this subject. And it's authentic to share something if it's not for the purpose of attention. Like the moment it goes into attention seeking, like, oh, I want to share my story of anorexia because I want people to see how strong I am that I got through it, or I want them to feel sorry for me. I want attention. I want them to, really be like, oh my gosh, that poor girl. If that is ever the reason that you're being authentic is for the attention, you're doing it for the wrong reason and you shouldn't. If you're doing it in a way to connect with somebody, connect with a fan, connect with a customer, have an empathetic moment because you can say, I felt that way before, or to teach, that is when it's something that it can be really powerful. Also, you have to realize that you're okay in the moment. Like, you don't want to share something when it's super raw and vulnerable. You share it once you understand it. And sometimes I blur that line a little bit. I remember when I was going through loss and grief for the first time, I think I was sometimes a little too open, almost using my fans as a therapy session on a live stream, and probably not the best idea. Yeah, it shows pain and it shows vulnerability, but I've made mistakes in this arena and I'm continuously learning. And that's why I like to study mental health and all of this stuff so that I can best understand how to be authentic in the right way. And I've done a lot of reading of books and studying on this subject and still learning.
Amazing. One of the things that you touched on earlier is that there's always another platform, always another social media network where you can go find an audience. But as you know, and you've built successful followings across all of them, the same content formula that works for one doesn't always translate to another one. So there's a discovery process of like, I got to figure out what works on these new platforms. Walk us through that for you. Tell us how you've discovered how to have the perfect fit and sort of tweaked content so it works well on these new and emerging platforms.
You know, it is true that nothing will work on every platform. And the more they come up with, the more frustrating it is as you grow these followings on each of them, which also you have to start from scratch every time. So it's like every time a new platform arises, me and all my, friends who are also use social media as their business model, we're all like, oh no, another one is here. Because you have to study it. You really do. You have to study that platform. And I remember, for example, it was a few months ago when I finally decided, okay, I really need to not just have a TikTok account. I can't just take music videos and throw them on TikTok because that's not working. And so I had to spend a ton of time sitting on TikTok and understanding as I swiped and swiped and swiped hours, being like, what is working on here for other people? And especially if I'd see a video come across my page that I didn't understand. And I thought to myself, why does this video have millions of likes? And I felt like that old lady that was just like, I don't get it. Whenever I'd have that feeling, I'd think to myself, okay, let's study this video because Gen Z is the one, for example, that's on TikTok. You have to understand what audience is on each vertical. And so by studying it and realizing, starting to notice patterns of, oh, this is what works well. Studying also off the platform, looking up articles about it, looking up how the algorithm works. It's so important to understand what the search engine is looking for on YouTube, on Instagram, it helps you be able to create content, not only for the audience, but for the algorithm and the way that this machine is dissecting the content. And it also, then when you start creating content, you'll realize there is a way to adapt every single content to work somewhat for each platform once you understand it. So it's not like you have to make completely original content for every platform, which that's the best way probably to do it. But when you don't have time to do that, you think smarter, not harder. And you're like, well, now that I have the camera set up and I have this concept, how can I make this work for multiple of the platforms? Whether it's filming it twice, by turning the camera over, at least you're still in the outfit, you're all ready, it allows you to think smarter once you understand why you're doing stuff and realizing that there's also a different relationship that you are having with the consumers on every one of these platforms, because on different platforms, they're looking for a different relationship. It's also different kinds of people that you'll find, which is really cool because I look at the different platforms almost as if they're Venn diagrams. My YouTube audience overlaps with my Instagram audience, but there's some people, for sure, a lot that are on Instagram and a lot on YouTube that don't overlap. So it's allowing you to it's not like the numbers go on top of each other and stack, they go out. And by making new content that fits each platform, you're reaching an astronomical number of people because they are different age groups, demographics, different people.
There must have been a point as your audience was growing where in the early days you were highly interactive, responding, and there's a dialogue happening between you and your fans. And it's always been a two-way street. But boy, once you get 300 million views on some of these videos and, super active, comment spaces, mostly all positive, but there's plenty of trolls there. How did you decide, okay, how much am I really going to engage here versus how do I create some space, so I can sleep at night and practice and write new content and stay focused on my craft and have time for my family while still making time for your audience?
I think that's by constantly just looking for new things. And for example, an example of this is recently I just started doing Twitch, which is a streaming service where you live stream. And I don't have huge high numbers on Twitch. I've just started on there. But one, I find a lot of enjoyment by it. And I think that's really important to evaluate when you do have something that's rolling really well. And I, for a long time, was so used to thinking of what is the most efficient, always thinking, what is the most efficient? What's the most bang for my buck in terms of time? And I started to realize wow, I can sometimes just choose to do something, not because it's going to get the most numbers or the most views or the most efficiency out of my moments, but I love doing my Twitch streams because it feels almost like the engagement I had back in the day when I did have a smaller audience, because some fans want to be casual fans or want to be casual customers or whatever it is. They just want to see you as like a friend in the hallway at school. Other fans or, business interactions, they want to feel like they're married to you. And I think that that's an important distinction to make, is there are different platforms or different relationships you can offer to your fans or customers. And so, for example, on my Twitch, those are the kind of fans that want to feel like they're in a relationship with me. They comment. There's less of them. I can see their comments. They show up. They'll hang out with me for 2 hours while I literally practice the violin, which took a lot of vulnerability to just have practices on stream in front of people. I was terrified at first, but I keep realizing, one, I have to keep stretching myself and trying new things. I have to allow myself to be vulnerable the more I put myself out there. But also realizing that these different platforms allow for different relationships with your fans. And that's another thing I learned. One of the most valuable things I learned about TikTok was when finally I realized, oh, TikTok isn't like Instagram where you make content for your fans. TikTok is where you're making content for anyone. If it's not entertaining for someone who's never heard of me, then it's not going to work on TikTok, because it has to be the kind of content that's like, it's like you're hooking up instead of being married. That's what TikTok is. And it took me a long time to realize that. And once I realized it, one, it was less personal, because it wasn't like my fans don't like me. It was, oh, I have to make content for that anyone. So I think that's one of the most important things about using these different ways of marketing, is you realize there's a different relationship involved in every one of them. And yeah.
It's funny, I think of each of these platforms as like a person that you have to make time to have a relationship with. And I'm thinking about you as an influencer, creating music, traveling around the world. How do you actually find time to post across so many different social platforms? And how do you prioritize the frequency by which you'll do that?
During a pandemic lockdown, it's been a little bit easier to do consistent types of social media like TikTok. I've gotten really good at just doing one, like I do like 5 a week at least, and finding out how I can also make the most of that moment by how can I also put this on Instagram? Like, how could I re-edit this to make it work for Instagram or whatnot? But when I'm touring, I think it's honestly just thinking of it's priorities. When I'm on tour, my priority is to the show. I am putting on a show every night for people who are so excited to see that show that I've prepared for them. That's the focus. And then whatever else I can squeeze in the day is like, great. And so also utilizing where I'm at, like when I'm on tour, yeah, I'm busier because I'm focused on that, but also it provides so many opportunities to make content. And if I can utilize that in a way that just goes with my day by filming funny moments, or having a photographer come out the first 2 weeks and take tons of just pictures for social media posting, like using the place I'm at for what it's actually for, rather than trying to fight against it. It's like, if I'm in music video mode, okay, well, we're here. Let's film some extra content that we can. If I'm in tour mode, oh my gosh, I have at my disposal these cool tour things that are interesting. How can I make what I do just trickle into everything? And I think that's the only way. It's by kind of focusing. That's the only way I can focus on everything, is by really focusing on what I'm doing now.
Smart. Okay, so with all the activity you've had across all these platforms and the amazing success that you've had, have you ever made a social media misstep? And if so, how did you right the ship?
Gosh, I could think of, just off the bat, I can think of 2. I put dreads in my hair one time. It was actually for a music video, but I'd always wanted to put dreads in my hair. I think they look so cool. I did not even think about, it didn't even cross my mind in the process that might be thought of as cultural appropriation, which is a very hot topic. And so I don't know, I suddenly saw all these comments about that, I hated certain cultures. I was disrespecting people. It was, it was white privileged of me. And rather than fighting against it and saying how dare you, I didn't say I just said, I'm so sorry everybody feels that way. I did not think of that, and I never meant to do that, and just getting in fights on social media is never going to, and sometimes the best response is just to say, I'm really sorry if I offended anyone. And another thing I remember recently, I'm a terrible speller. My managers laugh at me all the time. I spell everything wrong. I'm dyslexic. I just don't see it. And even words that you would think I would know how to spell, like everybody does. But I recently posted about a book club. I started a Twitch book club, which I was really enjoying. It's when we read the Brene Brown book. I read it with my fans and discussed it with them. But I was like posting saying, come read the first 2 chapters with me. And I spelled read wrong. Like, how does someone even do that? And and for 1 second, I have a thing because I was dyslexic and because I struggled reading in school. I have this underlying feeling all the time that I'm dumb. And I notice I get super protective of myself and reactionary if I'm in a situation where I feel like people think I'm dumb. And I started to go into this shame spiral over it, so embarrassed. And then I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to go on there and I'm going to tell people that even though I spelt read wrong, I'm dyslexic, sorry. Because they were all laughing, saying, ah. And I went on, I said, you know what? I used to have a lot of shame because I couldn't spell. And I used to think I was really dumb in school. And I felt like I was stupid because I couldn't spell. But now I know that's not true. And I'm still smart. I'm actually darn smart, and I shared that. And I was like, even if I can't spell, I had so many messages from fans expressing that my daughter is dyslexic and it made her feel so smart that you're dyslexic, just that goes back to authenticity. And I think it's really important sometimes to not just hide all the mistakes, but to say, shoot, dang it. That's a part of me, not something necessarily I'm proud of, but I'm still okay. And anyone else who feels like that as well will realize they're okay too, in spite of that, maybe even because of it.
Well, your honesty and vulnerability is inspiring. So there's Lindsey Stirling, this incredible performer, who's this, I guess you'd call you a craftswoman of the amazing thing that you do. But then there's really Lindsey Stirling, the business, and you're the CEO. And there's all these different components of your role, and certainly, your reputation and your presence and following in social media is really, really important. So for all the entrepreneurs out there who are out ready to start a business, and it could be something as simple as the next great ice cream store, to a dog walking service, to they want to be a physical therapist, to your local HVAC service person, and they know they can get an advantage if they're effective in using social media to connect with their audience. What advice would you have for them?
My best advice is to think broad. I have a friend who's a musician, and a lot of my examples will go back to being an artist or a musician or something, because that's the world I know the best for sure. But I have learned very much to think like a businesswoman. I have a friend who's a young artist, and I've been giving him advice because he's just starting. And I remember I was telling him how important it is to you should post something more often. You're not posting enough. He's like, well, I don't have a song to promote right now. And I was like, you're missing the point. The point is you're promoting you're just trying to be present. And in a world where there is so much noise, it's not always well, we have a new service that we want to offer, and so that's when we post. Or we have a new deal, a new sale that we're putting out there, so that's when we post. No, every post doesn't have to be about a specific song that someone's promoting or a specific branding thing. It's just about the overall picture. You are trying to sell either you as an entrepreneur, you're trying to sell you as a business, or your product. That is the picture, not the specifics. So go broad. And even when I'm doing my TikTok, I would say I still haven't 100% figured out how to kill it on TikTok. I'm still learning a ton. But I would say not a good amount of my stuff isn't even music based, because I find that that's a lot of times what the algorithm wants. And those sometimes do much better than my specific song-based posts. However, do they help the overall brand? Are they selling my personality as an artist? Yes. Are they leading people? Is it like the bait that's leading them back to the song that they will find if they go to my page? Yes. Even though like yesterday I posted one where I was trying to do this like crazy yoga thing and it was kind of funny because I failed. It has nothing to do with music, but people watched it and now they're watching my other stuff. So I would say go broad and realize that you're just trying to support the brand, not always the individual moments, songs, products, sales. It's all about the overall.
This is incredible insight. Thank you so much for joining us, Lindsey. I can't wait to start my own personal TikTok. I don't think I'll be rivaling you on the leaderboards anytime soon, but it's gonna be a lot of fun. Stay tuned for more tips on how to attract customers and grow your business.